G'day legends, I hope that you're all doing well. Now, I missed yesterday due to a very big night at an engagement party the night before, but we'll talk some quick updates and then we'll go onto the map and have a look at where things are moving, as there is some small movements. But first, a message from today's sponsor. Legends, I know how hard it is to gather information, to know what is credible and what biases the media has. I spend all day doing this, but today's sponsor, Ground News, makes this a lot easier. As you open articles, it gives you a quick visual breakdown of the news outlets covering it, their political bias, how factual the source is, and which entity even owns the source, as Ground News will remember what articles you've read and report in My News Bias, which shows you a track of your own consumption bias and what side of the arc your top news sources are from. Ground News' mission is to combine stories and articles from thousands of outlets, local and national, in one place so readers can see the full picture of what's being reported around the world, shine a light on what media bias, and hold media accountable in a landscape where it is impossible to consult a single news source for the full picture. It encourages readers to think freely by adding context and transparency to every news story so cooperative civil debate can be the norm. You can also follow specific topics and use a browser extension to see other sources reporting on the same story of an article, both through the app and the website. If this sounds good, go to ground.news/OAM to stay fully informed on breaking news, compare coverage, and avoid media bias. Sign up for free or subscribe for unlimited access if you'd like to support the mission. Thank you, Ground News, for supporting my channel. Now, this video in central Bakhmut shows a destroyed Ukrainian T-80B tank. Now, funnily, this tank was actually captured by the Ukrainians off the Russians earlier in this conflict by the 93rd Mechanized Brigade. And I guess it's the circle of life of a tank. Also, this footage shows Russia's newest production tank being the T-90M. Now, people will point to the T-14, but that is not really in a lot of production. We don't know how many they've got. It could be a dozen. So also the newest production model in Savatov. And I've included this to show the conditions of the battlefield, where in so many of these places only tracked vehicles can move. And even then, tracked vehicles will struggle here, as well as this shot of the conditions of some of the trenches, showing how bad the mud is currently. Now, both Ukrainian and Russian sources are claiming that Russia's Wagner Group are currently launching assaults to storm the Azov underground complex in northern Bakhmut, with many relating this to the Azov-style steelworks we saw in Mariupol. This is to the north and it is underground, and some areas are said to be 320 meters deep as this massive underground complex. This video is being released from Ukrainians in Vuhledar, showing Russia dropping some sort of incendiary munitions on their positions. Initially, people claimed this to be white phosphorus, but many claim that these are magnesium and thermite incendiary elements. Now, these can be fired from a 9N510 warhead launched from a Grad. Now, when I was reporting in Orikhiv near the front lines, these were littered everywhere. We've seen Russia use similar munitions in this war and also in Syria, and people jumped to the conclusion of war crimes of them using these. That said, the laws get very confusing, and even more so depending on if it's thermite or white phosphorus. Now, to my knowledge, white phos, often referred to by the Americans as Willy Pete, can only be used in things like smoke screens and marking targets, as it ignites with oxygen. That said, thermite and other incendiaries can be used. Now, people will point at the use in civilian areas being illegal. The question being asked is what classifies a civilian area if troops have been dug in and fighting in an area for months. Now, Human Rights Watch says these weapons inflict excruciating burns, sometimes to the bone, and can cause respiratory damage, infection, shock, and organ failure. But under international law, the use of thermite munitions, as well as napalm bombs, is limited to clearly defined military targets. This being, we won't ban something we ourselves use. Now, I understand that this shit is savage, but this is war. As Hawkeye said, war isn't hell. War is war, and hell is hell. And of the two, war is a lot worse. Also, these images went viral, getting millions upon millions of impressions that seem to show Russian troops used in human waves in a field, as geolocation has put some doubt upon these images. So, this is the main image that has been released. This one with the red marks, and the one of just the field. So these two But Geo confirmed has said 1.3 million videos, but wrong. These are not bodies. See proof. And he puts the geolocation here. And what he's done is he's actually got from the date of the 25th of January, which was in Ukrainian-controlled territory, 9 kilometers from the front line. So this is Ukrainian-held territory. He has marked this image that he's shown. So this was the image that was on the tweet of these marks. But these marks were in the field before Russian troops were there, or it was within that element. Now, this doesn't say that human wave tactics are not being used, but at least this image is a sense of misinformation itself. So the red lines up with the red, orange with orange. As you can see, there are not the artillery strikes, and this was in Ukrainian territory. So you need to be very careful of some of these that aren't incredibly clear. Now let's have a look at the map. Now in Bakhmut, Zelensky has said that Russian forces have suffered more than 1,100 deaths in the past few days, saying in less than a week, starting March 6th, we've managed to kill more than 1,100 enemy soldiers in the Bakhmut sector alone. Russia's irreversible loss right there near Bakhmut. Now Russia has said that it has killed more than 220 Ukrainian service members in the past 24 hours. But as always, these numbers are impossible to verify, and as I found out the hard way, never question it. Now, the Wagner Group leader, Prigozhin, says he's going to run for president in 2024. But in this video, he states as the Ukrainian president.
По поводу политических амбиций, стой так, чтобы тебе было меня хорошо видно. Сейчас будет очень важное заявление, которое поразит всех россиян и весь мир. Делаю политический каминг-аут. Политический каминг-аут, громче говорю, чтобы все слышали. У меня только что появились политические амбиции, глядя на все вокруг. И я принял решение в 2024 году баллотироваться в президенты. В президенты Украины. В президенты Украины. И буду конкурировать на этом посту с Порошенко и Зеленским. Если выиграю выборы в президента Украины, то тогда будет все хорошо, ребят. Снаряды будут не нужны. Сань, не переживай. Если прилетит, значит президентом Украины останется.
Now, let's actually have a look at the map, and it is the 13th of March. So, in the middle we have, of course, Ukraine, capital of Kyiv, Romania, Poland, Belarus, and Russia around here. The red is area Russia have taken since 2022, and the maroony purple since 2014, with this being Crimea and Donetsk in here. But where we're going to go is zoom in on Bakhmut, because we have seen some movements in here, although there's a lot of sources saying we haven't. So today's the 13th, we go back to the 12th, and then the 11th when my last video was. So on the north, west of Bakhmut along this road, and this road leads to Sloviansk and then Kramatorsk, we will see a balloon out of Russian forces in the past 24 hours, taking a lot more ground, both to the west and the north in the last 24 hours. Also in Bakhmut itself, we have seen on the southern side, Russia have pushed from the south to the north further, coming into more of these city blocks, past this reservoir we have spoken about a lot. Now, interestingly, on the ISW map, it shows that claimed Russian territory have crossed the Bamutka River here, which has been used as a natural border, into these city blocks of Bakhmut, into where it was sort of Ukrainian controlled on the west, Russia controlled on the east, that there's claimed control that they have crossed, and assessed control that Russia is moving to the north from the south. As always, let's compare the Western sources map to the Rybar map and have a look at what is similar. So, as it is showing, it's very similar, and if we take this reservoir as a focal point here, and where the Russian forces push out and around, again, it's very similar. And to the north, this one will show that Russia have pushed more close into Mankivka as well, around Avdiivka, where we have seen a lot of fighting before, and Russia seemed using somewhat of a similar tactic of not only an encirclement to a degree, but also as far as maybe an isolation. So if we see on the north from 11th from Avdiivka, we will see Russia gain some more territory. That will be the end of our maps today. Switzerland's president, Alain Berset, has reiterated his support on Switzerland's ban on supplying Ukraine with Swiss-made weapons. He said Swiss weapons must not be used in wars. Earlier this year, Switzerland stopped Spain from transferring Swiss-made weapons to Ukraine and also implied that confiscating Russian assets goes against the country's constitution, saying it would violate Switzerland's international obligations. He emphasised his belief in Switzerland's neutral stance while Switzerland has gone along with the EU's sanctions efforts against Russia. It has not moved regarding its military neutrality. Now, a survey in Switzerland by the research group Sotomo found that 55% of respondents are in favour of ending a ban on the export of Swiss weapons to war zones. Now, as Switzerland is a direct democracy, these things could certainly change. Also, Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko has arrived in Iran for an official visit to meet local leaders and discuss trade and economic cooperation. Now, both Iran and Belarus have become involved in this war, with Belarus acting as a launch pad for Russian rockets and staging for Russian troops, and Iran has supplied Russia with lethal aid. Now, Lukashenko has repeatedly claimed that he does not intend to send Belarusian troops to Ukraine. However, on February the 16th, he said that he would do so if at least one soldier sets foot in Belarus. Now, people have speculated this could be laying down the groundwork for a false flag attack, then sending in Belarusian soldiers. Now, as we head into worse and worse conditions and fighting will gain intensity and the new weapons being seen on both sides, new alliances and new offensives forming, misinformation will kick up rapidly, being harder and harder to determine what is true and see through the fog of war. So I would say be very cognizant of what you see, what you hear, what you read, as well as I'll do my best to wade through this as much as I can, but I will absolutely get things wrong. Now, I hope you're having a great day and a great start to your week. I'll speak to you tomorrow. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.